original positions as we begin to open schools. But I'm going to tell you something that you already know very well. The job market is incredibly tight, especially around early childhood care. And we're certainly feeling that as well, as I know everybody else is feeling. And so, I would say that as we move forward, we're have actually our first day of school for kindergarten through second grade starting tomorrow. I'm dressed up. That's why I'm dressed up, Bob, because I'm so excited for tomorrow. No, that's just a joke. But in any event, we're really excited to begin to start bringing our employees back, our kids back, our families back, which hopefully mitigate some of the significant needs, especially for our youngest kids, K1 and 2. Their parents will be able to send their kids to us 4 days a week. But again, as the largest employer, this pandemic has been really, really tough, especially for those who need childcare. I can tell you that I'm hearing from lots of teachers now who maybe teach kindergarten, first, second grade, but have a third grader or a fourth grader at home and asking, what can we do? Where's the childcare? What are the opportunities? A lot of our employees live in all throughout the Denver metro lots in the St. Vrain Valley School District. So I think that our issues aren't just isolated to Boulder Valley, that many of our families or our teachers live in Adams 12 School District, Adams 5-Star, or in St. Vrain Valley. And so certainly we have been feeling the pinch in the job market. We have tried to stand up some affordable options for our families and for our kids, options where we were losing money, we were having to subsidize with our budget. And it's not that we have that money, but we felt like that we really had a responsibility to our community to do something. And so we've had 300 to 400 kids participating almost daily, participating in their online learning while they're with us under school age care, licensed care. So I would say that's just a brief synopsis of what's happening and how we've been impacted. And again, I think that we're all looking forward to the time when we're not talking about COVID-19 and we can be more predictable and we can be there for everybody like we always have been. It's just been really, really tough to navigate some of these circumstances. And so in any event, I'll stop there, Bob, and happy to answer any questions. Or
yeah, well, I just have a little bit of a kind of a follow-up in terms of the description of your workforce, and that is, did you see, in this issue for who needs childcare and those sorts of things and what type of childcare they need, any differences across, your professional staff versus your maintenance staff versus your bus drivers, et cetera? I mean, was there any segment difference, or was it mostly just depending upon the age of the person involved?
Yeah, I think it's tough to say. I would say I heard mostly from teachers, but that's not to say that teachers were the only ones, although they make up a huge chunk of our workforce for certain. But again, we tried to provide that care at an affordable rate for all families and made it really clear for folks who needed assistance, we'd be there and help them out. We weren't going to turn anybody away. So I think I couldn't tell you exactly to what extent in our workforce who needed childcare the most, but we would try to just be there for everybody.
Very good. All right. Well, then, let's not take any questions from the audience at this moment, but let's rotate to Dana, and if you can join us. And I assume that you're going to want me to share my screen full of your slides.
If you want to.
Yeah, well, I certainly do.
I'd like to first thank Bob for promoting me to director. I'm actually HR manager for Boulder County Human Resources, but I'll welcome the promotion. So as Bob's bringing up the slides, I'll just jump right in. I know we're short on time. My name is Dana McCune, and like I said, I'm an HR manager for Boulder County. And amongst my peers, we support about 2,700 employees across the county, so also a very large employer. And it's broken down, about 700 of them are hourly employees, non-benefited employees, but COVID has impacted them just the same as everybody else in the county. So, they're just as important to our workforce as our full-time folks. We have about 1,000 exempt employees and 1,000 or so non-exempt employees. So whether you call them professional staff or you don't, They're all necessary staff. So you can just go on to the next one. This is kind of just an outline here, Bob. Thank you. And so we have multiple departments, and we support also teachers from the perspective of our Head Start folks. We have teachers in those areas, but multiple departments that do multiple different things across the organization, from policing to housing and human services, which they're impacted with the child care CCAP positions that they have, and providing that child care for people who are needing it from the perspective of not just COVID, but so that they can have child care for their low-income housing folks and such. So multiple departments, and I won't go through every single one of them, but a lot of different services that we provide to Boulder County. So next, the way that we've really approached this COVID-19 situation is that we have amazing commissioners, and they provided all employees, all benefit eligible employees, with 240 hours of extra leave. So outside of medical time, outside of vacation time, here's another bucket of time to make sure that our employees could navigate through this, whether it was because they were ill, their child was ill, or a family member, immediate family member was ill, they were quarantined. As you know, many offices and departments were closed for some time, so they, could use the time for that. Unable to work from home or fully work from home, and those are the situations where childcare was needed. Childcare centers were closed, camps were closed for the summer. So if you had to navigate through that with small kids, especially at home, and some of my peers are in this very situation, you could use that time in order to be able to navigate through that. And then also for our vulnerable population, those 60 plus, or who had underlying health conditions that made them higher risk, they were able to use that time as well. Including our hourly employees. So they didn't get necessarily the 240 hours because some of them are very sporadic, but they were also given a prorated basis based on the last couple of months, or if they were just being hired, what their schedule would be. So like I said, our commissioners were very, very generous with our employees and making sure that we could navigate through this. So from the child care perspective, as you probably all know, the federal government came out with the FFCRA, Families First Coronavirus Act, which was the 10 weeks of paid time, which we coupled with that 240 hours, or if you're an hourly employee, whatever hours you got, to supplement that. So because that leave was coupled with the Family Medical Leave Act, or FMLA, employees get 2/3 of their pay. But if you have 240 hours of paid pandemic leave that our commissioners gave us, you were able to supplement that 2/3 pay and still become whole. So next, the next thing that, really how we've approached this with especially our families with children in school, is really about flexibility. So in the very, very beginning of this, when we were all trying to figure out how to navigate this COVID situation, we had closed our offices and all basically went to a work from home situation, as we had, I'm jumping around a little bit, but we had this 75% rule. We communicated to all employees, if you can do 75% of your job from home, we're fine with that. And it's really not about, you have to meet the numbers and, staying really on top of that, but being flexible around, this is new for all of us. So we know that you have kids at home. We know that there's barking dogs in the background and it's distracting. And we need to be flexible as an employer to allow our families, especially with children, to be able to, we just roll with it, shrug that off, and you go on with your day and you do what you need to do to take care of your kids. Also, the resources and the communications that have gone out are really about contacting the ECCBC and see if there's any resources for you. Can the YWCA help you out with finding childcare resources, along with the flexibility and schedules outside of normal office hours? So we're an 8 to 4:30 organization, but that doesn't necessarily work when you have little kids at home. So can you do your work at 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night? And if the answer is yes to that, then we should be doing that. And so that's the communication that's gone out to all of our employees, but especially to our supervisors, to really support that and find a way to say yes, find a way to work with our employees so that we keep them, one, and they can manage without, or at least to minimize the stress in their life with trying to manage through this COVID-19 situation. Those working from home have received the tools that they need, and we just went through a process in which employees could go to the office, get anything that they need, county resources, and if they didn't have it there, that they'd be reimbursed for anything that they had to buy until we got to this point. You know, monitors, desk chairs, there'll be an internet stipend so that people, you know, as everybody's on the internet with now, especially with their children in school and trying to work, we're really hitting the internet hard. So that's what the county's really tried to do to support employees through this crisis, what we call a crisis, and making sure that our employees are suited for being able to work off-site. For our tier 1 and 2 employees is what we're calling them. Those are our essential services. We're all essential, of course, but our essential services like the sheriff's office, our caseworkers, those have been an additional struggle for our employees because if whether they get ill or they have kids at home, those are still things that need to happen. Child welfare doesn't stop happening or need to happen while this goes on. So those caseworkers, so it's really finding a way to balance and shift work and do whatever we need to do to meet the needs of the community and as well as the needs of our employees. So that's been number one for us, is really trying to find a way to make it work. Like for our sheriff's office, you have to have minimums as far as staffing goes for deputies, for jail deputies, and so on and so forth. So it's really, again, you know, you just have to find a way to make it work and flexing people around to make those schedules work. And then I think the next thing that Bob, that you would ask for some personal stories, and you know, I've shared a couple of them here. We did, you know, even with those essential services, we had a sheriff's deputy that was going to have to leave our organization to support his family during this because his wife had to work. So, you know, with the FFCRA and agreements around flexing his schedule, we were able to work something out with that employee. We also had some, you know, here's an example of a public health employee who's originally their school was going to provide childcare and staffing for their children. And then all of a sudden that didn't happen. So they're preparing their children to go back, and then that changed at the last minute. So not allowing that childcare on site really puts the burden on employees. And so again, it's not like, okay, well, you know, we're not going to say you have to get your job done or we're going to terminate you. That's not how we work in Boulder County. We're all about our employees as our number one asset and working through those situations. If time allows, there's a pretty telling story from one of our employees that I would just, you know, read to the group if possible, because it's a couple paragraphs, but it really talks to being in a desperate situation and the county coming through and you know, working with our employees for that childcare situation that they were in.
Well, thanks, Dana. And you know, there are two thoughts came to mind. First, we're going to stipulate that the school district that person was in was St. Vrain rather than Boulder Valley. And second, we were the tyranny of the schedule plays more into Rob's issues and situation, because once you start bringing people back to a given place at a given time, you know, everything has to be working effectively. Yet, well, you know, because you can handle some of this with the flexibility, Dana, that you were describing that the county was able to afford folks.
And I think we've learned as an organization that we could do this longer term if we needed to. You know, once COVID is gone, hopefully, poof, it's gone. We may not go back to everybody being in the office 8 to 4:30. You know, this has been an eye opener for the county, in that if this works for our employees and they can do their job from a remote location, doesn't matter where it is. It could be in Alamosa, it could be in another state. We've found a way to make this work and to keep our organization moving.
That's impressive. I know, Rob, do you have any comment that you want to make at this point, or should we continue?
I think I'm good, Bob.
Okay. Then I think we should move to Beth. Beth, I do not have a slide show from you, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen until we have time for Jen's presentations. So Beth, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Beth Serrata. I'm the Assistant HR Director for the City of Longmont. We have, approximately 1,600 employees total. About 950 are full-time benefited, and the rest are temporary seasonal employees. So, and as with, Boulder County, we have lots and lots of different mini businesses within the City of Longmont. We've got community services, which we have a library, children, youth, family division. We've got senior center, museum, recreation, golf, etc. We also have public works and natural resources, which is parks, streets, water treatment, engineering, traffic. We've got our internal services, such as HR, IT, finance, risk management. And we also have our external services, such as planning and development. So lots of different needs from lots of different divisions within the city. When we first, in March, we were hit with COVID, we were trying to keep all of our employees employed and pay them their full rate. So until April or May 25th, if a program was down or facility was closed, we continued to pay our employees for the average hours they worked. During that time, we also put out a survey to employees asking what their child care needs would be. We asked who is in need of help. So that was early on, I want to say March, beginning of April. And we had about 30 to 40 employees respond with such needs. We did provide, during the summer, some childcare, day camp type situations for our employees. And since then, some of the things we're encountering is, of course, how do we keep our facilities open and provide excellent customer service for our citizens while maintaining a 50% occupancy in our facilities. Another thing is, keeping employees working, the employees that have the childcare gaps. We again wanted to make sure anyone that was working from home had the necessary equipment to do the work. Early on, before even COVID, we had a strong teleworking and flexible schedule policy. And so our philosophy was that if an employee has an idea of possibly working from home or an altered schedule, the answer is not no. It's a conversation between the department and the employee to figure out, what the business needs are and what is realistic in providing these options. So we came into this COVID with a basis and foundation of being flexible and working through that. So that has helped us. Another concern we had was keeping the workplace safe, of course. So we put it all in our practices on how we would do that. We currently have about 27 employees that are utilizing COVID FMLA pay at this point. And we are paying 100% of their wages. 24 are relating to childcare, 3 are for their own health. So we feel really good that we've worked with our employees, communicated with our employees, really researched and tried to solve issues so that we could keep them employed, keep our citizens happy, and be productive. So let's see. I think your next question was childcare availability. I talked about our survey. And it seems like, we've got employees from across the city that are needing this COVID. So we've got about 10 in community services, 10 in public safety, 10 in the public works and natural resources, and 1 in planning and development. So I don't think necessarily, it's discriminating on who needs the help. We had one situation where a public works natural resource employee was having the child care. So what the city did is actually worked it out so that that person could work on weekends, and that would free up some of the child care gaps during the week. So we are really, doing everything we can to think outside of the box. Let's see. What have we done to mitigate the strains on our workplace that is due to childcare issues? Encouraging open communication. Like I said, we're working with our employees, flexible scheduling and remote. We're encouraging our employees to be compassionate with each other, and try to understand that all of us are going through some tough times here. I think generally all employees are really trying to do the best that they can. Initially, we had some employees that, were sort of upset that they couldn't work remote. But as we're having conversations with employees, we're finding that remote work not necessarily is easy, because you're juggling your family, you're working all hours of the day, and that can be stressful. In fact, we found that many remote workers are actually putting in more time than they would if they were at the office. And I've worked a little bit remote myself, and I'm finding that too. I keep the computer on, so I'm, constantly engaged with what's going on. Let's see. I think I may have hit all your questions. Did I miss anything?
No, not from my perspective. I'm going to cycle back and ask everybody if there was any situation in which they couldn't respond to the particular needs of a given employee. But we'll ask that later.
Okay, sounds good.
So let's thank you, and let's rotate to Jen Sprinkle, although at the moment I don't see her on my screen.
I'm here, Bob.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you moved. I'm sorry. Thank you. The problem,
Yeah.
the Zoom stuff keeps recycling or reshuffling the pictures. All right. Would you like for me to open up your slide deck?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. And just thank you for including me and the City of Boulder in this conversation. It's an important one. It's a challenging problem to solve and a new problem for employers. And so I appreciate the opportunity to have a broader discussion with employers across the county. So what I wanted to share with you all was what our approach has been thus far. And you can head to the next slide.
Mm-hmm.
There have been a few things that I wanted to highlight. One is, and that's been mentioned by others on the call, that we have been engaging our workforce through a series of employee pulse surveys. And I want to share some information about the most recent pulse survey we did in August, because I think the information is quite telling. And so what we're doing is asking our workforce to share some information for us And that really forms and shapes the services that we provide to employees. We are operating with a flexible work schedule as well as in a telework capacity. And what I mean by a flexible work schedule is we have folks who report to work in person, and some of their challenges are their actual work schedule needs to be more flexible. They might not be available on Monday, Tuesday, but they can do Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And so what departments are really doing is trying to move the workforce around to cover the scheduling needs in new and creative ways that we haven't done before. So we have sort of both things happening from a work scheduling perspective. And as others in HR mentioned, there are federal paid sick leave and expanded FMLA programs that we are administering, and coming up on January 1st of 2021, the state of Colorado will have a new paid sick leave program that includes closure for childcare. So we have paid leave as part of our process. We have always had very generous time off plans for our employees, and these are just more of that. We have also offered childcare reimbursement at a rate of $15 an hour. We did this in April and May when schools immediately closed and there was this very urgent and pressing need. We didn't see a lot of employees participating, but it was very meaningful for the employees who did participate. And so we ended that when school ended, and we shifted into summer camps. Our Parks and Rec department put camps on, and we held spots for employees over the summer, and many employees did participate for their children. And so as we head back into a new school year, you can head to the next slide. I'll share with you some information that we surveyed our employees. We have about 1,700 employees overall. Our last survey, 643 employees participated, which is a great response. Their typical work arrangement of those that responded is that 45% of them are completely teleworking, 25% are working in person, and 30% are doing a little of both. So just to give you a sense of the demographic of the employees that participated. And what we found is that a third of the respondents reported that they had children in their household. So about 214 employees that responded to the survey were responding from the perspective of being a working parent. And we'll head to the next slide. Over 70% of the parents who responded to the survey said that they were providing childcare in some capacity during working hours. And so you see the breakdown over there on the right. So many of them are sharing caregiving responsibilities with another household member, or they're the primary caregiver, or they have another friend or family member, and so forth. So we find that people, employees that are working from home are really trying to do it all. They're really trying to juggle their work life with their home life, with their children at home unexpectedly. And it's great that we are able to provide the flexibility so that folks can telework and be at home. And as others mentioned, their schedules can be whatever their schedules need to be. But at some point, the stress starts to set in of trying to actually do it all and provide everything to everyone at all times. So head to the next slide. We asked employees about their future plans. And so, for example, if childcare is not available, so full-time in-person school and or childcare. So if we had to go back to what we experienced in March and April, what would your plans be? And the vast majority of employees said that they would basically continue doing what they have been doing for a very long time now. They would continue to share caregiving responsibilities, or as the only sole provider, continue to provide care. And so not a lot of shift in employees' perspectives about where they've been and where they're going. We asked about what options would be of interest to them, and what we found was the vast majority really focused in on increased flexibility with their workload or their work schedule and their hours. So a desire to continue to balance things and try to do it all. Interestingly, over half of the employees said that they were interested in a childcare subsidy. So they might be interested in obtaining services on their own, but they would need some financial assistance in doing so. So I wanted to share these survey findings with you because I thought you would find it interesting to see what's happening with our employee population. And so we'll head to the next slide. And so these are our key next steps. It really is about flexibility. This is what employees are telling us, that flexibility is important to them and they would like us to continue to be flexible with them. They also appreciate paid leave. We have good participation in the paid sick leave plans, and we're required to do so with federal and state programs, and we will continue to do that. And then from a childcare perspective, the subsidy also is something of interest to employees, and they're thinking about how sustainable is this? And I think as an employer, we have to ask ourselves, will burnout set in? And how sustainable is it for employees to continue to go on the way that they are? And that's what's on our minds, and that's what we're talking to employees about. And so very likely we may bring back the subsidy, still working through the details of it, but it seems to be a program that's of interest to employees. And then the question for us as an employer is our own affordability and ability to support employees in that way. But I also wanted to mention, as I was preparing for today, connected with Housing and Human Services at the City of Boulder, and I'll have Wanda introduce herself, but I think what Wanda has to offer is this really interesting intersection between affordability and availability. And these are services that we as a city provide to community members all the time. And so as employers, we are trying to solve a new problem, but there are folks who have been working on this exact challenge for a long time. So Wanda, I'd love for you to introduce yourself and just share a little bit about the community perspective.
Everyone, I'm Wanda Pellegrino-Caldas. Excuse me. I'm the City of Boulder's Family Services Manager. So two of the programs that I work with are the Childcare Subsidy and the Family Resource Schools program, which is in 5 elementary schools. And so over the course of 30 years, we've actually been dealing with these same issues before COVID and continue to see them happening as we work with families. And really what we're seeing, what we have been seeing is that not too many families were interested or looking for childcare during the months leading up to now. However, starting in about August, we have seen an increase in requests for childcare supports, and most of those families they already have slots, and we've helped them to retain those during the months that schools and childcare centers were closed. But we've also started to pick up lots of families that are really looking for support with the remote learning, whether they are working or not, and that's something that we've been providing subsidies for, and/or full scholarships or partial scholarships depending on the family need. And we're doing that with a number of providers in the community, but also to BVSD School Age Care and the YMCA, which is also a collaboration with BVSD and the schools where the FRS program is located.
Well, thanks to you both. We do have a couple of questions from the audience, and then I will, kind of rotate around and give everybody a chance to respond to each question. And the first one comes from the perspective of mental health, and we've talked a lot about accommodation, the various organizations, kind of accommodating the needs, and kudos to everybody for thinking their way through that, and with fixed budgets and other sorts of things, which is incredible. But what's your take on the state of mental health, and how is that playing into the demands? And I don't know if we just go Rob, Dana, Beth, and Jen again, and then maybe Wanda, if you have something to add on that, you can throw it in. So is there a mental health aspect that we need to worry about?
Are you talking about mental health from the employee perspective?
Yes.
So absolutely, really top of mind as well. And we've had a lot of discussions and a lot of communications about it, you know, always offering EAP services for employees. This is a big shift for a lot of our employees, you know, especially employees that, you know, like structure and being around other people to do their job. This has been really tough on a lot of employees. And so as best we can, you know, we need to support them from their mental health status as well. And doing those reach outs and making sure that we're communicating with supervisors to say, make sure that you're making those touch points at least weekly so that you have that contact with people, because we're kind of out on these islands all alone, trying to do our jobs. And it is a big stressor on employees. And that's why, you know, we're trying to dial back some of that stress as well by saying, you know, you don't have to be perfect all the time on this call or any call. And when you have kids running, I mean, those are all very big stressors for employees. So really having grace around, you know, the way that people are operating within what they have is really important, and being there and making sure that we're reaching out, and not just on a phone call, but that you're seeing people and keeping your groups together and having those contacts. And I can speak for human resources in general. We really need that. We don't have that office camaraderie where we can just go around and have a chat. So we're making concerted efforts to make sure that we make those contacts even with each other, because it is really a big part of mental health.
Rob, anything from your side of the?
Yes, Bob, absolutely. I think that, and I think Dana brought up some great points. You know, for us, many of our employees, especially our teachers, are doing something they've never done before, right? We have fundamentally changed their job from an in-person relationship to trying to do that online. Tons of stress. You know, obviously we offer a robust offering of employee assistance programs. You know, we try to reach out and provide services and supports. But, you know, there's a lot of people that are scared for their safety. And even with the latest information, it's tough to reassure somebody who's scared. So I think a big concern for our employees, big concern for our community. I could tell you, the superintendent, you know, and on a fairly consistent basis, whether it's students we're trying to track down or their parents who are struggling from the changes that they've had to go through that a pandemic will create in a community. I think that we better be paying attention to the mental health needs of our community, of our employees, of our kids. You know, to Dana's point, trying to be there, you know, and give people space to be. It's okay to fail, right? And I think that, you know, when you have high achieving employees, and I think that we all do, people are failing more than they've ever failed in their careers right now. Superintendents included, right? Like, we're not perfect. None of us are perfect, and that can take a toll if leadership within all of our organizations doesn't give people the space to fail, and it's going to be okay. But I could tell you that it's something we're paying very close attention to, and I think that we'll continue to need to pay close attention until we get on the other side of this.
Very good. Beth, are you still there?
I'm still here. I got a text message or something came through. I'm on my phone. So, yeah, definitely. We're encouraging employees really to take care of themselves, you know, seek EAP. We have peer support within the city. I think one thing that has helped a lot with employees is our city manager holds a 1 hour, well, 2 1-hour sessions each Thursday through Teams, and, you know, all employees are encouraged to attend. He gives an update on the status regarding, you know, COVID itself, the numbers, where we are, employment. It's very transparent in his message, and offers and asks for lots of questions, which employees are asking great questions. You know, they're expressing their feelings, good conversation back and forth. So I think that has helped a lot. You know, we thought we might stop those meetings at some point, but I think they're really helping city employees. We're also, you know, within departments encouraging, you know, Teams meetings For example, in HR, we have a daily admin Teams meeting, half hour in the morning. We've got another one for comp, our HR partners. So we're actually feeling more connected than we had before. We're actually seeing everyone on these meetings, and everyone is sharing what's going on, so we can start our day with, feeling connected in that way. So, a constant battle with trying to keep everyone connected.
Well, thanks, Beth. Jen, how would you respond?
Yeah, I won't repeat any of the other things that were already said. I'll just add new information. We also asked employees how they prefer to receive communications, and it turns out employees really appreciate email. And I know we're always all inundated with email, but that is their preferred method of receiving information. And so we provide regular COVID updates, and it includes a lot of the resources that others have mentioned, as well as sort of what employees need to know from the city manager's office, for example.
Great. Wanda, is there anything you'd like to add?
Sure, I'll just quickly add that also from the community perspective, we're seeing also these same issues, anxiety, stress, safety concerns, isolation, and separation from their peer groups, especially for children as well. So one of the things that we're doing through Family Services is that we provide counseling, individual support for students, but we are also supporting staff members and just other city employees if they need connection to resources for mental health counseling and other services.
Great. It's coming up on 8, and I've got 3 questions that I'd like to rotate around again. 2 from the folks that are on the line, and 1 that I'd like you to think about, because some of these additional resources that have been available are going to run out either at the end of this calendar year or sometime early next year. And the question is, everybody's been trying to be as accommodating as possible, but there's also a kind of a limited resource question, and trying to see what that does. That would be where we close. So let me ask the first one from the folks that are on the call. What sort of interest would there be for family/community cooperatives, smaller groups that might form? Have you heard any interest in that sort of piece forming? I know there's a lot of push in Rob's territory for getting at least certain groups of kids back to full day, front and center teaching. But there's also, as we talked with parents and providers in our earlier listening sessions, there was kind of an interest in smaller, cooperatives. And so I'm just curious as to what people have heard on that front. And let's go around the same way. Dana, Rob, Beth, and then Jen. So Dana.
Well, I think it really speaks to, one of the employee stories that we heard from folks is that there's a lot of fear out there, not just for kids' health, but your vulnerable population that's in your home with you even. So finding ways for employees, and this employee specifically, have basically what you're describing, Bob, in having their own little cooperative with 4 families. Somebody that's going to lose their job, somebody that didn't have childcare, somebody, and making their own cooperative. So I think that's absolutely a good choice, would be for a lot of families to, especially, when you're taking care of elderly parents sometimes in your home. So you don't want to send your kids to school necessarily with big groups of people and then have them come back, with something that could potentially infect a vulnerable family member. So I think that would absolutely be a good option for sure.
Rob, what have you heard on that front?
Oh, well, we've heard a lot, Bob. I think that we saw the learning pod concept start to really gain traction even before the summer started toward the end of last year. I think, I think that we're open to doing different ideas, but I think that equity is such a core principle for us in Boulder Valley School Districts that we worry that those opportunities become inequitable. I would say that we've investigated a few ideas. I'd say our energy right now is focused on trying to get as many kids back to school in person as possible. But to Dana's point, we have some families that are just not going to be able to come back to us, right? Because either they live with somebody who's at high risk, or, so we know that. So we know that this is going to be an ongoing issue. I think that, one of the things that we did in Boulder Valley Schools is we developed a working advisory group when we ran into some logistical challenges of opening. And they've come up with some interesting ideas on whether it's mobile teachers, mobile tutors, how do we push services out into the community for those who can't come to us, I think are ideas that we're investigating. But at the core of what we want to do is achieve equity and make sure that we're doing that. So I think that we've looked at some things. Once we get schools open and running, I think that we'll continue to look at some of those.
Yeah, very good.
For sharing
Beth?
that perspective, Rob, on equity, absolutely at the forefront, for sure.
Yeah, very good. Beth?
Yeah, we're hearing a lot of, frustration and worry from employees that are trying to manage, what the school schedules, the ever-changing school, schedule, and how do you plan for that? Just inconsistencies, is it remote? Is it hybrid, on campus? A co-op may, provide some stability or enable employees to better plan rather than having an ever-changing need for finding childcare.
Good, thanks. Jen?
Yeah, I think folks are really just looking to find the edges of where this all is. We've gone through a series of phases where we had, sort of the initial COVID response, and then for most employees, there was a summer, and now there's another school year. And it's really like these chunks of time, and people are feeling like, where are the edges of all of this moment in time? Where's the beginning and where's the end? And the reality is none of us have a crystal ball. We don't know where the end is. We don't know when a new beginning might come. And I think that's really what it is how do we as employers stay agile? So as circumstances are evolving and as things are changing, that we're staying in touch with employees and understanding how their needs are evolving and adapting to those needs.
Well, good. Then I'm going to skip to this next question, and one that says, sort of scenario planning, and in many ways that links into that final question on, resources and the ability to continue some of the programming and flexibility that you folks have discussed. One of the questions we had was from a person who works in a division who has to be at a particular place at a particular time, in order to deliver their service, or to be a good employee. Now, there's some flexibility in that, but what type of scenarios can, I assume everybody in the background is just going crazy trying to think of all the alternatives, but just give us a little sense of the scenario working that you're all wrestling with. And then, if you could just spend the last sentence or two, speculating on the resources to carry on and needed to carry on and those sorts of things. So again, Dana, Rob, Beth, and Jen, and then we'll wrap it up after that.
Well, I think to Jen's point, if we only had a crystal ball, to know what this is going to look like, the hope is for, a vaccine, obviously, so that we can go back to somewhat normal life. But for this particular instance, we have the sheriff's office, we have motor vehicle, we have teachers, we have caseworkers that have to provide services, like I said earlier. And so we're wrestling with this as well. No organization on the planet can continue to pay employees that can't work. So, what do you do? And we don't have the answer to that just yet. And putting all the smartest people and whomever, that, you know, different perspectives from so many different people in the same room to come up with those ideas, I think is what we have to rely on, because we don't have the answers as to if this goes on for months and months and months more, how do we manage that? Because we don't know, honestly.
Rob?
Yeah, this is a huge challenge, Bob. I won't lie. I think that in Boulder Valley School District, we've tried to repurpose people as possible, as that makes sense. To try to, you know, there's always things that, at least in our organization, that need to get done. And I think that our employees at this point have been really thankful and grateful that we've been able to do some of that repurposing, and whether it's bus drivers helping out in schools, doing COVID checks. There's lots of new work that this pandemic has actually created for school districts. But the funding that we've received, the extra funding, is one-time dollars. These aren't recurring dollars, right? So I think that, you know, we're going to do everything we can to keep our employees whole. I mean, you know, we're a people business, and so we need to make sure that we keep our most important asset with us, for sure. I do think that there'll be a point in time, if things don't get better and the funding cliff from the state happens, which I think we're all anticipating, and we're going to have to make tough choices. I think that, you know, and we'll do everything we can to keep those services closest to kids, as whole as we can. But again, we have to be fiscally responsible as well. I think it's going to be a balance. I think it's going to be a challenge. You know, I think our hope is, let's just try to get folks back in. Let's try to recover some of the learning that we know we've lost. And then as this budget season comes forward, we do have some reserves that we can use, but we'll have to plan and have to tighten the belt, certainly, as we think about the 21-22 school year.
Beth?
So, yeah, the fear is there. What happens when, you know, all our efforts to keep people employed isn't meeting our business needs? That's scary. I mean, we've done some job sharing, trying to help people there, and we've talked about all the flexibility. We've done some reassigning of employees. Our big thing right now is we're reassigning to golf cart sanitizers. Who would have thought that we would need that? We've got school crossing guards that when school's not open, they're not working. So, you know, we try to keep them employed because we don't want them to go somewhere else. So we're reassigning them until the school opens up. I don't know, all we can do is keep trying to think outside the box. But yeah, there is a point when the business needs aren't met and you have to make the hard decisions.
Jen?
I think it's important to remember that there isn't a one size fits all. You know, employees are individuals and they have varying and different needs. And so it really is about how do we offer a number of things that work for folks in different ways. And I think, you know, for example, with the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, the FMLA is a program that is available now through the end of this year, through December 31st. But that's ending. And so we don't really understand yet from a federal response perspective, what might happen with that. Will that expanded FMLA end this year? Will it carry into 2021? So that remains a question mark. And I think for folks who've really needed to step away from the workforce, that's been a great option. But the answer to that is unknown at this point. We have the state of Colorado has a new paid leave regulation. It's much more limited. I believe it only goes up to about 48 hours in a year. I think there's some question marks around paid leave that still are yet to be answered. And I feel like it's going to evolve at the last minute like it did earlier this year. And we all just jumped in quickly to figure out how to solve that. But I think there's still some questions at this point. And as employers, we need to look at all of the options and try to provide a variety of options for employees.
Well, thank you all. I want to say a couple things. First is one would be hard pressed to find a group of employers, much less public employers, who are doing as much to be flexible and connect with their staffs as you guys. So thank you for both sharing those insights and the strategies. And maybe you've learned something from one another, but we've certainly learned something from you. The second part is, and this I'm going to take off my analyst hat and put on my advocate hat, and that is, gee willikers, wouldn't it be nice if we got the next coronavirus relief bill passed in DC, and then we could kind of figure out how that shakes out all the way down to our local communities. But, and then finally, I just wanted to thank you generally, the four of you, Dana, Rob, Beth, and Jen, and all of the folks that participated this evening. We appreciated your questions as we integrated them into the conversation. And as we said at the outset, Kathy and Darcy summarize these sessions and put them up on the YouTube channel that's available. And so your time will not be lost. Other people will kind of look into this session going forward. We had a really productive session last time with the private employers, and I wanted to thank you for another great session. So at that, we're a little bit ahead, which is good. I think we'll call it to an end. Kathy, is there anything you want to say that we should impart to people?
I think you covered it. We'll put the recording out on our YouTube channel, and that's easy to find. You can just use our name, Longmont Early Childhood Community Coalition. I know that's a lot of words there, but just look up Early Childhood Coalition, Longmont. You'll find it there. We'll try and get it up there tomorrow.
And we want to thank Luis for helping us with the translation. We are excited to be able to do this going forward with all of our sessions. So thank you all, and have a great evening. Take care. Bye now.